today I'm talking with Mark Baker. Thank you very much, Mark, for accepting my invitation.
Oh, my pleasure.
Mark is a travel writer, and he has been writing for loads of big names like BBC, National Geographic, and mostly for Lonely Planet.
Yeah,
And he's
that's correct.
living in Prague, which is even more interesting because he's a US citizen. And I was just wondering, what made you choose Prague and make it your home?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had no intention of making Prague my home, of course, many years ago when I moved here. At the time, this was the late 1980s. I was a very young guy at the time, and I'd gotten a job as a journalist in Vienna. And I was covering the communist regimes in the Eastern Bloc. And then 1989 happened, and suddenly Vienna became a very uninteresting place to live because all the excitement was in Eastern Europe, on the Eastern Bloc. So in 1991, I decided to move up to Prague, more or less permanently. I've moved back to the States a couple of times since then to work as a journalist, and then to open up a bookstore, actually, which I ran a business for a while here in Prague, and then most recently to be a travel writer, as you said in the introduction.
Very nice. Is Prague a good place to be in isolation?
It's funny. If you would have asked me this before coronavirus, I would have said, I don't know, probably not. I mean, I don't know how good the Czech government is going to be at containing a virus that is so, that is so seemingly all powerful. And especially looking at what was going on in Italy, we were very afraid that the same thing would happen here to us because a lot of Czechs go to Italy on their ski holidays, etc. But the answer turns out to be surprisingly yes. The Czech government handled this epidemic so far very well. I would say we were one of the first countries to go into lockdown. We were one of the very first countries to do the mandatory masks in public requirement. And if you look at the international worldwide statistics on coronavirus, you'll see that the Czech Republic has a relatively low, very low incidence of coronavirus and a very low fatality rate. So I don't know, however they did it, they did a good job so far. So, let's hope they keep doing it.
Yeah, definitely. How does this pandemic affect you?
Affected me. Well, I live by myself in my own apartment here. So the first way that it affected me was to scare me, I would say, because everybody was joking that we are all living through this movie called Groundhog Day. But in my own personal feeling at the time, and it kind of woke me out of a nightmare, at the beginning of the pandemic, that I realized that I was living in a different movie. That movie is called The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. And that means that a person can't actually interact with anybody else. And that prospect really scared me at the beginning. I've gotten used to it. But as a freelance, as an independent guidebook author and travel writer, I'm very used to traveling for long periods on my own. Sometimes our research trips go for 8 weeks or 9 weeks or 10 weeks. So I knew down deep that I can get through this. I've been by myself for weeks at a time. So I know that the secret is just to keep it one day at a time, just to get through every day, just to try to keep moving forward in whatever way. And at some point, you'll come out the other side. So, that's kind of what's gotten me through, basically, being a travel author, if you can believe it. It sounds ironic, but it's true.
I know exactly what you mean, because this is the thing that scared me the most, to be honest. I was thinking of Tom Hanks and Wilson,
Yes.
he made Wilson. So,
Right.
because I'm living by myself as well. So and I'm an extrovert. So I
Yes.
need people. It's not that I like to be around people, I need people. So this is the thing that scared me the most as well. And also what I've chosen to do is to focus my attention on things that I can do. And this way, that part of the brain will be in a totally different world. So
Right.
this is basically what I'm doing now. So yeah, I totally get that. But yeah, it is a difficult time for loads of people. And even if you are on a completely different set of emotion, let's say that you're an introvert, I think at some points it can get to you.
Oh, definitely. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but I've seen on your website that something good came out of it for you. So, I've seen that you are going to start a new project, and this project is a book, and it's called, on working title, Times of Change.
Right. Yes. Time of changes.
Time of Changes. And I was thinking that you could tell us more about it, because it's such an interesting thing. I really like to see when things go down this way, what
Right.
good comes out of it.
Right. Right. Let me tell you about two books, actually. The first book, I had no intention. The Time of Changes, I'll get to in a second,
Hmm.
and I'll tell you all about that. But this lockdown actually gave me two book ideas, and one of them came very spontaneously out of the lockdown. You know, one of the things that we are allowed to do in the Czech Republic, I know at the beginning in Romania, you weren't allowed to do this, is we are allowed to leave our houses for sanity walks, basically. You know, we can take an hour or 2 hours out of a day and go walk in the park, go wherever we want, and that's fully allowed legally. So I got into the habit of going out for an hour or 2 hours every day and taking a walk somewhere in my neighborhood in Prague. And I started to take photos, of course, on my walks and document them a little bit. And then I started posting the photos on Twitter and Instagram. And I got a really good feedback. People love these walks, even if they can't. I mean, I don't know if they love these walks. I mean, maybe that's extreme, but I mean, they appreciate the walks in some way. You know, people who want to see what Prague looks like, who can't travel here now because of the thing, or people like you guys who can't leave your houses, you know, for these walks, just to see what, you know, just to remind you, go for a walk in nature. So people have asked me to maybe to write a book someday just about my favorite walks in Prague. So that might have actually come out of this directly, you know. Now the first book, the book that you mentioned, Time of Changes, that's something that I was working on a little bit last year as a concept. And then over the lockdown, I worked with the publishing house in the Czech Republic here about the concept a little bit and actually signed the contract. And that's something that's going to be on the, you know, I told you at the beginning of this interview that I was a journalist in Vienna and was coming up to the Eastern Bloc, to Czech Republic and Czechoslovakia at the time, of course, and to Romania, other countries, and writing about life under communism, political changes, economic changes, the revolutions of '89. And then I moved to Prague in 1991. I opened up a business, a bookstore, and I was working as a journalist. So the publishers here in the Czech Republic say, well, why don't you write the book as an outsider and show us what it looked like before and after the revolution here in the Czech Republic. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share some stories. Of course, during the communist period, I was working with people who were later revealed to be members of the security police, etc. So I was kind of enmeshed in that world. And a lot of funny things happened along the way, you know, being followed, being, you know, this and this. And then in 1990, 91, 92, actually trying to open a business in a newly democratized country in the Eastern Bloc, and some stories that came out of those early days. So that's what the Time of Changes is going to be, you know, from the late 80s to the early 90s. You know, we're in the span of, say, 6 or 7 years, everything changed completely.
It did, it really did. And when you were talking about that, it just made me think about, I don't know if you've read the play or seen the play, Mad Forrest.
I have not, no.
It's really interesting. It's about when the communist regime finished in Romania, a team of writers from England came to Romania and interviewed people, real people that were either a florist or a security agent, like you mentioned. And
Yes.
all these people, they are not named, obviously. And it's a book with passages from these characters. It's very, very interesting. I just thought to mention it because maybe, I don't know, it will give you some inspiration around
Oh,
it.
absolutely. I'll take all the recommendations I can. You know, I'm also very interested. You know, as a travel writer, I write a lot about Romania, several books about Romania so far. I travel there all the time. In fact, one of the things that happened to me during this lockdown was that my plans to write a book about Romania this summer, a guidebook, were of course canceled, you know, for, you know, understandable reasons, but still pretty sad. So, you know, it's funny, the book is going to be about Czechoslovakia, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how, about my travels in other places, and of course how things changed in other parts of Europe too, because that will be interesting. Other parts of Eastern Europe.
From all the places that you've seen so far, because you've seen loads of places,
right?
If you would be able to choose, where would you go now?
Oh, where would I go now? Well, it's May 1st, right? So I would probably go to the Black Sea like everyone else. Actually, that's one of my favorite places to go. I know you're going to groan and say it's not the same, and it's not as good as it used to be. But I actually like to go to Vama Veche. It's kind of feels free still, and I still kind of like it. And I like the Danube Delta. So if I were sitting here right now on May 1st, I'd say, well, I wouldn't mind being on the Black Sea right now. I think it would be kind of nice.
Well, to be honest with you, we're filming this today on the 1st of May, and
Yes.
Reminding people, because there are loads of events on Facebook, for example, and they say there are competitions, challenges, and there are people in their houses just trying to recreate an environment
Right.
from
Exactly.
the seaside, which is obviously not possible, but fun for everybody to do, I guess. So it's a nice place to be. I was thinking you would choose something more exotic or something, but
well, for you, that's a good question. People often ask me what my favorite country is, in Europe to go to, etc. And I always go with this answer, and it's going to be like, oh, that's not so great. But it really is Slovenia. It's a really small, tiny piece of green in the middle of Europe, and it's a really beautiful country. So if you've never been to Slovenia, or never considered being, you never would dream of it in your lifetime, try it out. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. So, I could easily picture myself hiking around in some mountain pass in Slovenia right now. That would be wonderful, actually.
Yeah, I've never thought of going to Slovenia, to be honest, but your opinion matters a lot because you've traveled a lot. So I would definitely take into consideration what you would recommend.
You would not be disappointed. You really wouldn't. You'd write me and say, "Oh my God, I never believed it," but it's really a beautiful country.
Okay, it's done. First occasion, because I don't know when that would happen.
Right.
And talking about that, how do you think things will change for you being a travel writer during next weeks, month, and so on?
Well, the very initial effects of coronavirus have been disastrous for travel writers generally, and travel companies. The company that I write guidebooks mainly, the main company that I write guidebooks for is Lonely Planet, and they announced that they were closing 2 of their corporate offices and laying off a lot of staff. I had planned to write 2 books for them this summer. Both of those books have been canceled. I also do guided river cruises for National Geographic down the Danube, and our cruise for June that was to go from Budapest to Nuremberg has been canceled. There's a second cruise in September, and we don't really know what the status of that cruise is. So far, it's still go, but that could easily change. So I'm actually looking forward now to having a lot of time to work on this book that we talked about, because I would be quarantining anyway this year, regardless of what happens with coronavirus. So for me, the timing was pretty good. For a lot of travel writers, though, this is a terrible time to be in this particular profession.
Yeah, because we don't know what's going to happen. As you said, it's day by day.
It could be year by year. It really will. Of course, it will depend on the severity, the duration. There's a lot of things that we don't know, but it's pretty clear that this year, 2020, in terms of travel, is more or less a loss, a nothing. And then next year will only be a fraction of what last year was. So, I think it will build slowly, and we won't be to where we were in 2019 probably for a few more years. That's my personal feeling.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. Mark, it was such a pleasure talking to you. And And I really look forward to meet you in person at some point. I've
Sure.
never visited Prague, so it's
Well,
either Slovenia or Prague.
or Bucharest, you never know, so.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you again, and I hope we'll meet each other soon.
Super, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.